Hi everyone, and I'm here today with the very last of my top 10 Victorian novels videos. And I'm going to be talking to you today about one of the more challenging but most rewarding Victorian novels I have read, and that is Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. The first George Eliot that I read was Middlemarch, and that was one that I came out of being more relieved than anything to be done with it. But ironically, reading Daniel Deronda has made me appreciate Middlemarch more. And I think it's that I know that I will continue to gain things out of Middlemarch if I continue to reread it in the years to come. So I think as I mature and I reread it, I will gain more from it. In addition to that, I have been surprised at how much Middlemarch, as opposed to maybe some other classics even, has stayed with me. I think George Eliot's works, Daniel Deronda included, has really strong staying power, and so they are very challenging, but I think so worth the reward. And Daniel Deronda is about two main characters, and they are sort of contrasting characters. Daniel is the main character, and he does not know his family background, his lineage, and he really wants to know. He's coming into his own. He's going to be a young man. He kind of needs to pick, to choose what exactly it is he's going to do with his life. And so that is, this book is kind of his journey of that. And in the very beginning of the book, he is rowing in the river, and he passes by a woman who he can tell immediately is planning on drowning herself. He goes over and he rescues her and pulls her into the boat, and in comes Mira Lapidoth. She is a Jewess who has no family that she knows, and she has come, she knows her father. Her father was not a nice man at all, and they were living in New York, and so she ran away and took a ship to England. She's hoping to find some of her family, and they develop this deep friendship. He takes her immediately to stay with the Mayrick family, who he is good friends with. The Mayricks are some of my favorite characters. Hans is his good friend, and he's the son in the family, and then there's the widowed mother and three sisters. And so Mira really comes to love this family, and they love having her live with them. The other main character in this story is Gwendolen Harleth. Gwendolen Harleth wants money and power and success, and will stop at nothing to gain it. So it's really interesting that she kind of views the way that she will gain happiness as independence and wealth, and Daniel views the way that he will gain happiness as finding, his people, his family. And, meeting Mira for him sets off this spiral of events, this chain of events of him figuring out whether he is a Jew. And then there's lots of Zionism in this, which is so fascinating. At the time of the Victorian era, the Jewish people having a land of their own was just a pipe dream. And I did hear one commentator, a Jewish commentator, talk about how now nationalism has become this kind of dirty word. But I think it's because of the past with Nazi Germany. Yes, that nationalism, definitely bad, definitely not healthy. But she says here, you can see with the Jewish people, a healthy nationalism. Nationalism doesn't have to be a negative thing. People wanting the people in their country to succeed and do really well is not always a bad thing. So I thought that was really fascinating to hear. That was nationalism then, and obviously it's such a hot topic now, and that this is such a relevant book. I've heard a classic is a book that's never done saying things, and so I think that's really neat. It was written in the Victorian era, but an issue that's very relevant today. What I also really love is how much art and music and cultural references are a huge part of this. This is such a rich text. And music especially is used as this device that people view they can have power over others with. People who are talented in the musical areas, it's kind of this route for them to have independence. They can make their wealth that way, and that is something that Gwendolen seeks at some point. There's also such a cast of just such fascinating and interesting characters, some of them despicable. Hugo Grandcourt in particular just made me sick to my stomach with some of the things that he said. He was just detestable, utterly detestable, but you just love to read about him. He made such great reading, and he was you know, such a unique character, and so he definitely brought an interesting element to the story. Didn't like the man a bit, but he made for interesting reading, and he's very unforgettable. One aspect that does frustrate me about George Eliot thus far, and Katie from Books and Things put it this way, she said that George Eliot writes about all the wrong people. So the majority of the story is not focused on Mira or the Meyrick family, and they were some of my favorite characters. I really wanted to get to know them more, but unfortunately I was kind of left hanging, and there were certain characters in Middlemarch that I wanted to know more of, and I didn't get to see them quite as much. So I will be interested with the other George Eliot books that I read to see if there are characters that I feel like I'm missing out on. It will be interesting to see. One thing that does make her feel different from maybe Thomas Hardy or Dickens, or like Wilkie Collins, definitely, is she's incredibly realist. Her characters feel very flesh and blood, and the things that happen in her plots are things that seem like they could really actually happen. So I think that's interesting. She does stand out maybe from other Victorian authors. Her plots don't feel like other Victorian authors' plots. So yes, definitely worth your while, worth your time. It's going to stick with you, and I really do highly recommend it. I will see you guys for another video soon. Bye.